Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. So by now, I'm sure you've all heard the news. Some left-wing idiot tried to kill Trump. Yeah, it gets said, the bullet just missed, like a couple inches the other direction, and Trump would be dead. Before all this, in regards to something else, there's this left-wing message board I read, and somebody asked, like, how Trump keeps surviving all this stuff. The criminal cases, the scandals, the COVID, which apparently he was pretty close to dying during COVID. Now the assassination attempt. It's like, how does Trump keep surviving all this? And then somebody replied, he has top-tier plot armor. And it's true. The thing is, you have to, and I'm not trying to preach, I'm just trying to say that, God has a plan, and he's got agents that carry out that plan, which isn't to say that Trump is a good guy or a godly guy. He's neither of those things. You can be good or bad. It's still part of the divine plan. That's why all the there was Hitler survived 1 million assassination attempts. Because, Hitler was part of the divine plan. And, yeah, and I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler. But which is why I never really stress too much about these things. The cases, now this assassination attempt, probably be some other assassination attempts. And really anything with this, because I know that that there's really nothing. I mean, that I'm confident that Trump is part of the divine plan, and if he's not, there's nothing I can do about it. So, the thing that first thing, I'm kind of surprised it took this long for somebody to try it. Liberals are inherently violent. They're, the liberals and just people on the left in general. Not everybody on the left is a liberal. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the guy who tried to kill Trump, maybe it was two guys, but probably just one. I wouldn't be surprised if the guy who tried to kill Trump was more of like a Bernie type, because they're especially violent. But liberals, and this is a worldwide thing. Liberals are inherently, because Pim Fortuyn, or I don't know how you say his name, but he was sort of like the start of the anti-immigration movement in Western Europe. He got assassinated by a liberal. There was somebody tried to kill Bolsonaro back in 2018. A liberal tried to kill Bolsonaro back in 2018 in Brazil. The Hungarian prime minister just got stabbed by a liberal. This is who liberals are. They're very violent people by nature. Not all of them, most of them don't actually act out their violence, but they all support it. There's not, on our side, there's a much more ambivalent view towards violence. We definitely have some very violent people on our side. I wouldn't be disputing that. And then, but in terms of just support for political violence, there's ambivalence on our side, but that only really applies to the politically engaged. On the politically engaged, there are some people who are very pro-violence, although most aren't, and most who are kind of against it, or really, most who are pretty much against it. I mean, they might support Proud Boys stuff violence, which is really just self-defense and non-violent self-defense at that. Non-lethal self-defense, not non-violent, non-lethal self-defense at that. But they might support a kind of a LARPing violence. But that's it. And again, and even then it's just self-defense. But with the left, it's very different. With the left, it's very different. The activist left is explicitly pro-political violence, and the base, again, my family are all rank and file cultural libshits, and they're definitely like they don't for them it's more of like a casual thing. They kind of like they don't like it's not something that they really talk about or think about, but they definitely support it if that's what it needs. If that's what it needs to be needs to happen for their side to stay in charge. Um. So for me, I've historically been more pro violence because as somebody on the right, and I've been frustrated by other people on the right not being as pro violent. Now recently, I've started to change my mind on that. Um, but the thing is, like, even though I'm a right winger, I think like somebody on the left. That's like, and the so which is so I don't really have like a moral problem with the left's support for violence because I kind of feel the same way they do, just in the reverse. It's like, to me, like, I don't see anything inherently wrong with violence. The problem with violence is, are you using it for a good end or a bad end? Again, lately I've been starting to change more towards like a more like general nonviolent. I mean, obviously there are times where you need to use violence and need to use force. That's just how life works. I'm not a pacifist, but I'm definitely more towards like really erring on the side of not using any violence. Um, but the but that hasn't historically been my mindset. Historically, I've been like, well, like, look, like something like when that woman got assassinated during the Brexit vote, that pro EU lady, pro EU politician, she got assassinated by some pro Brexit guy. And like my view at the time was, well, I can't condemn what happened. I mean, like, she deserved it for trying to keep Britain in the EU. And so I don't think that's how most people on the right felt. I think most people on the right were like, oh no, this is terrible. You can't do that shit. You shouldn't feel that way. But here's the thing is, like, whoever was right on that, if it had been the reverse, okay, if it had been a pro-Brexit politician getting assassinated by a anti-Brexit person or a pro-EU person, the left would have 100% supported it. They might have said for tactical reasons that they were against it, but morally they would have been like, well, this is existential. It's life or death, so it's okay to kill people over it. And that viewpoint makes sense to me. Again, these days, I mean, do I think that guy should have assassinated her? No. I mean, tactically it didn't make sense, but even morally, no. I don't think you should do that stuff. I think that there are times where violence isn't just acceptable, it's mandatory. That, to me, is not one of those times. So the problem is, it's kind of like, do you really trust everybody to make their own decisions about like when it is and isn't okay to use violence? So it's a lot easier to just say to condemn violence across the board. I mean, that may not be intellectually satisfying, but you can understand why people would say that, especially since most people aren't capable of making complex moral decisions. I mean, generally, I don't have any problem with, as a rule, saying don't use violence or don't kill people. I don't have any problem with that. I will say, though, that that's just not how the left thinks. Which doesn't mean we try to fight fire with fire or be like the left. That's A, it's not going to work, and B, there's certain things that, to me, and I don't want to go too off topic here, but there's no such thing as winning at all costs. Or for me, there's no such thing as winning at all costs. All right, like like there are certain things that, if that's what it takes to win, then we're better off losing. Okay. But it doesn't take that to win. It doesn't take that to win. But even if it did, there's certain things that I'm not willing to do, that I'm not, places I'm not willing to go. and you shouldn't be willing to go either. And you shouldn't be willing to see people on our side go. So the first thing is, how does this change the election? See, I want to say it doesn't have an impact, but I thought Biden's debate wouldn't have an impact either, because what I said before the debate was, well, everybody already knows Biden has dementia, which I stand by. I mean, let me stop you a second. I know that there are some liberals who genuinely didn't know it, but they're all going to vote. They're all going to vote for Biden. They were all going to vote for Biden then, and they're all going to vote for Biden now. But swing voters, again, they're retards. They're the stupidest people in the country. They already knew Biden had dementia. So, like, who fucking cares? I just didn't think it would have an impact. And if you just look at the polls and not the media cycle around it, there hasn't been a huge drop-off. Now, there's internal polls supposedly showing Biden just getting wiped out. So, I mean, maybe. I know Richard Bear. I mean, even actually, I was about to say Richard Bears was, on saying, "Oh, it's bad. Biden's done. This is horrible," and stuff. Then he released his poll, and it's got Biden losing by 4 points. It's like, well, wasn't he losing by like 2 points before the debate? So, like, or 3 points. I mean, 4 points is that's not impressive at all. And even Richard Bear says that Kamala would lose by more. Kamala would lose by like 5 or 6. So we'll have to wait until he sees gets the polls for that. But this, like, what's it really going to change? Like, I mean, like, I think what it could do is, like, to us, those of us who are politically engaged on the right, we know what the left is. We're not surprised by this. We know how evil the left are. There are a lot. I mean, swing voters largely don't. It's hard for me to believe that they wouldn't after all we've seen. Part of it, again, swing voters are the stupidest people in the country, which is saying a lot. But, so part of it is that, but, well, not part of it. I mean, all of it is that. Like, so I could see that, maybe some of them don't really realize how evil the left is, and this kind of, wakes them up. And then there is just sort of like, Trump is, we've seen the image at this point, just how much of a fighter Trump is, how much of a leader he is. And there's this feeling that America is falling apart, and that, both at home and abroad, and that we need strength. And Trump is a strong leader. He may be a bad strong leader. He may be like a Hitler type, somebody who uses that strong leadership for evil ends. You could say that, but you can't say that he's not a strong leader. And that's like what America, which is clearly falling apart, desperately needs a Caesar type. And people instinctively know that. People who are swing voters instinctively know that, especially with, like I always say, politics is about tribe first, vibe second. I didn't realize that rhymed until now. Tribe first, vibe second, and then everything else. And so swing voters, they may be stupid. They are stupid, but they have good instincts. Those instincts can lead them astray, but that's what those instincts generally go by. So their instincts pulled them towards Biden last time. I guess it pulled enough of them towards Trump in 2016. And this I guess helps with, pushing more on that. I just have a hard time seeing, like, to me, with how polarized the country is, let's say Trump really was ahead by 4 points before this assassination attempt, which I don't believe. I think it was probably more like 2 points. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, Trump was ahead by 4 points, because he does have a tendency to outperform the polling averages. This would, I would say, get him 1% additional at most. And who knows if people are even going to still care at Election Day. I mean, it should be a short bump, but that's about it. What I'm more interested in, though, is how, like, when Trump does take power again. Because, and I've been adamant about this for a while, that, like, when Trump gets back in office, this isn't going to be like last time. The left, the left was insufferable for 4 years, but they played by the rules. This is a crazier left that's in more of an existential threat, that's been emboldened by their increasing violence on their side for years. There's the pro-Palestine stuff going on. there's going to be a lot of violence when Trump gets back in, probably using the Palestine stuff as a catalyst. And the and Trump, it's not, there's not going to be a Milley or Esper to hold Trump back this time. Like Trump's going to use a lot of violence to crush it. I think the left's going to get beat pretty bad pretty quickly. I think that there will be not a full-blown insurrection, but there will be large-scale leftist violence. And I think stuff like this makes Trump and the people around him even more willing to use heavy state force against the left. Now, the left is going to start the fight. Don't get me wrong about that. But I think this makes it even them more eager or more willing to respond violently on their own part. And I think that it makes the public more acquiescent to it. Not just swing voters, but even like moderate libshits. Like the people like the ones in my family who are just, like cultural liberals. They're not particularly politically engaged. Like I stand by this. Like as much as they hate Trump, as scared as they are about him coming back to power, when Trump gets back in, a big part of them is going to be relieved. And when Trump crushes the left-wing protest, a big part of them is going to be relieved. Because they're tired of all the chaos and stuff. So yeah, that's all for now. See you in the next.